Captain Jake Morrison was bored. He sat in his chair on the bridge of the ship called Wanderer and looked at the stars outside. They had been traveling through space for 3 months now, and nothing interesting had happened. His crew of 42 people were getting tired of the same daily tasks. They were scientists, engineers, and military people, but right now they had nothing exciting to do. The ship was moving slowly through a quiet part of space. They were supposed to be looking for new planets and mapping star systems. So far, they had found lots of rocks and a few interesting stars, but nothing that made anyone excited. Jake looked at his watch. Only 6 more hours until his shift ended. Then he could go to his room and try to sleep. Suddenly, Lieutenant Karen Phillips sat up straight at her station. She was the communications officer, and her job was to listen for any signals in space. Her fingers started moving fast across her control panel. Jake noticed the change in her body language immediately. "Captain, I'm getting something on the emergency channels. It is weak, but it is definitely there. Someone is sending a distress signal." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years in space, he had never heard from another intelligent species. Humans thought they were alone in the universe. Now someone was calling for help. "Can you make it clearer? Can you understand what they are saying?" Karen worked on her computer for several minutes. Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing and watched her. The only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Karen looked up at Jake. Her face was pale and worried. "Captain, the signal is automatic. It keeps repeating the same message over and over. The language is not like anything we have ever heard before, but our computer has translated some of it. The message says they are called the Valerian people. They live on something called Refuge Station. They are being attacked by someone called the Kraith Dominion. Their defenses are broken. They have women and children there. They are asking anyone who can hear them to please help." The bridge was completely silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. This was first contact with aliens, and it was happening because they were in trouble. Commander Luis Rodriguez walked over to Jake's chair. He was the second in command of the ship. "Sir, this might be a trap. We do not know anything about these aliens. We do not know what we would be getting into if we go there." Jake knew Luis was right to be careful. They had no weapons designed for fighting other ships. The Wanderer was built for exploring, not for war. Their tools were meant for studying rocks and analyzing gas clouds. If they went to help these Valerians and found a real battle, they might not survive. But Jake also knew that he could not ignore a cry for help. If there were really children in danger, he had to try to do something. That was what humans did. They helped people who needed help. Set a course for the source of that signal. Tell everyone to get ready for possible danger. And contact Admiral Patricia Grant back on Earth. She needs to know what is happening. The crew moved quickly to follow his orders. People ran to their stations. Alarms started beeping softly to warn everyone that they were going into a dangerous situation. Jake felt the ship turn as the pilot changed their direction. The engines got louder as they increased speed. Karen opened a communication channel back to Earth. It would take hours for the signal to reach home because of the distance, but Admiral Grant needed to know that humanity was about to meet aliens for the first time. "How long until we reach them?" Jake asked the pilot. The pilot checked his screens. "About 4 hours at maximum speed, sir?" Jake nodded. Those 4 hours felt like the longest of his life. He kept thinking about what they might find. Were these Valerians similar to humans? What did the Kraith look like? Why were they attacking a place with civilians? Lieutenant Danny Chen came up to Jake. He was in charge of the ship's weapons, which were really just mining tools. "Sir, I have been thinking. Our cutting lasers are very powerful. They can slice through solid asteroids. Maybe they could damage enemy ships too." Jake looked at Danny with interest. It was a good idea. The mining lasers were designed to cut up space rocks so they could collect minerals. They were not weapons, but they were very strong. Against an armored warship, they might actually work. "Good thinking, Danny. Get those lasers ready. Target the most important parts of any enemy ships we see. Engines, weapons, anything that looks vital." As the hours passed, the crew prepared as best they could. They had no armor on their ship. They had no missiles or torpedoes. They had mining lasers, some small defensive guns meant for shooting debris, and a lot of hope. Jake thought about Earth. His home planet had always been a tough place. Humans had to fight to survive against nature, against diseases, against each other. They had invented better and better weapons over thousands of years. War was terrible, but humans understood it very well. Maybe these aliens did not understand war the same way. Maybe they had lived peaceful lives on gentle planets where everything was easy. The Kraith might be the first truly aggressive species these Valerians had ever met. Humans, on the other hand, came from a world where almost everything could kill you. Earth had storms that could destroy cities. It had animals with claws and teeth that saw humans as food. It had diseases that could wipe out millions of people. Humans learned to be tough because they had to be. "Captain, we are approaching the system now," the pilot announced. Jake sat up straight. "Slow down as we enter. I want to see what we are dealing with before we commit to anything." The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the star system. Immediately, the sensors started showing them what was happening. On the main screen, everyone could see a large space station. It looked damaged. Parts of it were torn open and air was leaking out into space. Around the station were 3 huge warships. They were twice as big as the Wanderer. They were shooting at the station with bright energy weapons. Each blast tore more metal away from the station's hull. It was clear that the station's defenses were completely gone. Floating in space were the remains of smaller ships. They had tried to defend the station and had been destroyed. Jake felt anger building inside him. This was not a battle. This was a massacre. "Sir, what are your orders?" Luis asked quietly. Jake looked at the screen for a long moment. Every military rule said they should wait for backup. They should call for more ships and better weapons. They should be smart and careful. But 3,000 people were about to die, and humanity had not come all this way through space just to watch innocent people get killed. "We attack. All weapons ready. We are going in." The crew looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew this was dangerous. They knew they might not survive. But they also knew it was the right thing to do. The Wanderer turned toward the 3 massive warships. The small exploration vessel accelerated toward a fight that would change everything. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to learn what happens when you call for help and humans answer. The Wanderer moved quickly through the debris field. Broken pieces of ships floated everywhere. Jake used them as cover, hiding his small ship from the 3 big Kraith warships. The enemy had not noticed them yet. They were too focused on destroying the station. "Get us as close as possible before they see us," Jake told the pilot. "Danny, pick your target carefully. We will only get one good shot before they know we are here." Danny Chen studied his weapon screen. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. "The nearest ship has its engines exposed. If I can hit the connection point between the engine and the main hull, it might cause serious damage." "Do it." The Wanderer burst out from behind a large piece of wreckage. The mining laser fired, sending a bright beam of concentrated energy toward the Kraith ship. The beam was designed to cut through solid rock, and it worked perfectly on the ship's hull. Metal melted and tore apart. Sparks flew everywhere. The Kraith ship's engine exploded. The blast was so bright that everyone on the Wanderer's bridge had to look away for a moment. When they looked back, the enemy warship was spinning out of control, flames and gas pouring from the destroyed engine section. "It worked," Luis shouted. It actually worked. But there was no time to celebrate. The other 2 Kraith warships immediately stopped shooting at the station. They turned toward the Wanderer. On the screen, Jake could see their weapons powering up. These weapons were much bigger than anything on his ship. Evasive maneuvers. Now the pilot threw the ship into a tight spin. Energy blasts from the Kraith ships shot past them, missing by only a few meters. If even one of those blasts hit them, the Wanderer would be destroyed instantly. Jake's mind raced. They were faster than the big Kraith ships, but not by much. They were smaller, which meant they could turn and dodge more easily. But the enemy had better weapons and stronger armor. In a straight fight, the Wanderer would lose in minutes, so they would not fight straight. They would fight like humans always had, using every trick and advantage they could find. Take us into the debris field. Use the wreckage as obstacles. Make them work to get a clear shot at us. The pilot dove the ship between floating chunks of destroyed vessels. The Kraith ships followed, but their larger size made it harder for them to maneuver. They had to slow down to avoid hitting the debris. This gave the Wanderer precious seconds to line up another attack. "Danny, whenever you have a shot, take it. Aim for engines, weapons, anything important." The mining laser fired again and again. Each time it burned through the Kraith armor. These ships were built to fight other warships that used missiles and energy weapons. They were not designed to defend against industrial cutting tools that could slice through asteroids. One of the Kraith ships got angry. Its captain decided to try something aggressive. The massive warship accelerated directly toward the Wanderer, clearly trying to ram them. It was a move designed to scare the smaller ship into running away. Jake saw the opportunity immediately. "Sir, that ship is coming right at us," the pilot yelled, panic in his voice. "I see it. Keep our course steady. Captain, we need to move," Luis shouted. "Not yet. Hold steady." The Kraith ship got closer and closer. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. It looked like a collision was certain. At the last possible second, Jake gave the order. "Now, full acceleration forward and roll." The Wanderer shot forward and spun. Instead of running away from the enemy ship, they flew toward it and rolled to the side. This move put them right next to the Kraith warship's command center, which was normally protected by the ship's heavy armor. But at this close range, with the enemy ship moving fast in the wrong direction, that armor did not help. "Fire," Jake ordered. The mining laser burned through the command center's windows. There was a brief flash as the atmosphere inside the Kraith ship exploded out into space. The warship went dark. Its engines shut down. It was dead in space, the crew killed in seconds. The bridge crew cheered. "That was amazing, sir," the pilot said, breathing hard. "One more to go," Jake said. "Where is it?" Karen checked her sensors. "Captain, the last Kraith ship is running. It is heading away from the station at full speed." Jake wanted to let it go. They had won. The station was safe. But Luis stepped closer to him and spoke quietly. "Sir, if we let that ship escape, it will report back to the Kraith Dominion. They will return with more ships. Bigger ships. And next time we might not be here to help." Jake knew Luis was right. As much as he hated it, they had to finish this. Chase it down. The Wanderer pursued the fleeing Kraith ship. The enemy vessel was fast, but it had taken some damage earlier in the fight. Its engines were not working at full power. Slowly, the human ship caught up. Danny lined up one final shot. The mining laser struck the Kraith ship's power core. There was a massive explosion and then nothing. The battle was over. Jake looked at the wreckage floating in space. 3 Kraith warships destroyed. Thousands of enemy crew members dead. He felt no joy in this victory. War was ugly even when it was necessary. "Captain, I am receiving a transmission from the station," Karen announced. "It is not automated this time. Someone is actually talking to us." "Put it on speaker." A female voice came through, speaking in a language the computer quickly translated. "Unknown vessel. This is Coordinator Ilara of the Valerian Refuge Station. I do not know who you are or where you came from, but you just saved 3,000 lives. We have been calling for help for 3 days. You are the first to answer. Please tell us who you are." Jake took a deep breath. This was it. First contact. The moment when humanity would introduce itself to the galaxy. He opened a channel. "Coordinator Ilara. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran exploration vessel Wanderer. We are from a planet called Earth. We heard your distress call and came as fast as we could. Are you and your people safe?" There was a pause. Then Ilara spoke again, her voice filled with confusion and wonder. "Earth? Terran? I have never heard of your world. Our database has information about thousands of species, but yours is not among them. How is this possible? And how did you destroy 3 Kraith heavy cruisers with a single ship? No one has ever done that before." Jake looked at Luis and smiled slightly. "Coordinator, I think we have a lot to talk about. May we come aboard and help with repairs?" "Yes, please." "You are welcome here, Captain Morrison. Docking Bay 7 is still functional. And Captain, thank you. Thank you so much. You saved us when no one else would come. We were happy to help." As the Wanderer approached the damaged station, the crew began to relax. They had survived. They had won. And they had made contact with aliens. But none of them understood yet what they had started. News of this battle would spread across the galaxy. Other species would hear about the humans who appeared from nowhere and defeated the mighty Kraith Dominion. Some would be grateful, some would be curious, and some would be very afraid. The galaxy had been at peace for a long time. That peace was built on rules and agreements and the belief that violence was never the answer. Now a species had arrived that understood something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes violence was the only answer. Sometimes you had to fight to protect the innocent. Humans came from a world that had taught them this lesson over and over. Earth was a hard teacher. It made survivors. It made fighters. And now those fighters were in space, ready to defend people who could not defend themselves. The Deathworlders had arrived. and nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Council building stood on Celestia Prime, the most important political planet in known space. It was a huge structure made of crystal and metal that could hold thousands of representatives from hundreds of different species. Today, the Great Hall was filled with noise and confusion. Ambassador Tyron stood in the center of the speaking platform. He was a Valerian with blue-green skin and large eyes. His people were traitors and diplomats, not warriors. The attack on Refuge Station had shocked his entire civilization. Now he had to explain to the council what had happened. "Please, I need your attention," Tyron called out. But hundreds of voices kept talking. Everyone had an opinion about the news from Refuge Station. High Counselor Marin raised her long arms. She was an Archon, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Her people had been part of the council since its beginning, over 1,000 years ago. When she gestured for silence, the noise slowly died down. "We must have order in this chamber. Ambassador Tyron will now explain what happened at Refuge Station. Everyone will have a chance to speak, but first we must understand the facts." Tyron nodded gratefully. "Thank you, High Counselor. 3 days ago, the Kraith Dominion attacked our civilian station. We sent distress calls on every emergency frequency. We asked for help. For 3 full days, no one came. The Kraith destroyed our defenses. They were preparing to board the station and kill everyone inside." He paused and looked around the hall. Then a ship arrived. A single ship. The crew said they were humans from a planet called Earth. This ship was not built for war. It was an exploration vessel. But it fought 3 Kraith heavy cruisers and destroyed all of them in less than 20 minutes. The hall exploded with voices again. This time, Marin let them talk for a moment before calling for quiet. Representative Kale stood up. He was from the Arinthian Assembly, a civilization known for having the most advanced military in the galaxy. "That is impossible," he said firmly. "Our computer models show that you need at least 6 advanced warships to defeat 3 Kraith cruisers." "Are you certain about these facts?" Tyron activated a display screen. The entire council watched the recording from Refuge Station's sensors. They saw the human ship dodge and weave through space. They saw it use weapons that looked primitive but worked devastatingly well. They saw tactics that seemed reckless but were actually brilliant. The council sat in silence as the battle played out on the screen. When it finished, no one spoke for a long moment. "I would like to introduce Colonel Helen Porter," Tyron said. "She is a military officer from Earth. She has agreed to explain their tactics to us." A tall woman walked onto the platform. She wore a uniform that was simple but professional. Many council members noticed that she moved with confidence and strength. She was taller than most species in the room, and her eyes were sharp and alert. Honored council members, Colonel Porter began. "I have studied the battle data carefully. Captain Morrison used several strategies that are normal in human military thinking, but seem to be unknown here. First, he used debris as cover to hide his approach. Second, he attacked weak points instead of trying to break through heavy armor. Third, he used close-range maneuvering to prevent the enemy from using their superior weapons effectively." Representative Kale frowned. "These tactics seem very aggressive and dangerous. Why did your captain not try to communicate with the Kraith first?" Porter looked at him directly. "Because the Kraith were killing civilians. In human military ethics, when innocent lives are in immediate danger, you act first and talk later." This answer caused more discussion. The idea was both shocking and logical to many representatives. High Counselor Marin spoke again. "Colonel Porter, help us understand your people. What kind of world creates such effective warriors? Your ship was not even designed for combat." Porter thought carefully about her words. "Earth is a very difficult world to live on. Our gravity is stronger than average. Our atmosphere contains oxygen, which is very reactive and can be dangerous. We evolved alongside predators that would terrify most species here. Our history is full of conflicts, natural disasters, diseases, and constant challenges." She continued, "We did not choose to become warriors. Survival on Earth demanded it. Every human carries that history in their genes and their culture. When Captain Morrison saw people in danger, thousands of years of evolution and training took over. He did what any human would do. He fought to protect the innocent." The council members sat quietly thinking about what she had said. Then Counselor Varn stood up. He was a Kraith, large and heavily armored. His species had been the dominant military power in this region for centuries. The Kraith Dominion protests this unprovoked attack on our vessels. We were conducting legitimate military operations. These humans are clearly dangerous and aggressive. They threaten the peace of the galaxy. Porter's expression hardened. With respect, Counselor, you attacked a civilian station full of families. You ignored hundreds of years of treaties and laws. The only reason the Wanderer was there was because someone finally answered a distress call that your victim sent for 3 days, while everyone else did nothing. Her words hung in the air. Every council member knew she was right. Refuge Station had called for help on all emergency channels. Every major civilization had received the signal, and all of them had decided not to respond. They had cited non-interference policies and political considerations. Only humans who had never heard of these policies had responded immediately. High Counselor Marin made a decision. This council will take a break for 6 hours. We need to consult with our governments. When we return, we will discuss what place humanity should have in our galactic community. Colonel Porter, you and your delegation are invited to stay and observe. As the council dispersed, many representatives approached the human delegation. Some were curious and asked questions. Some offered friendship and trade agreements. Others gave warnings and threats, though they tried to be subtle about it. Colonel Porter stood with her team and watched the various aliens walk past. She had spent weeks learning about galactic civilization. It was impressive in many ways. They had achieved peace and cooperation on a scale humans could only dream about, but they had also become soft. They had forgotten that sometimes peace required strength. A small alien approached her. It looked like a walking plant with flower petals for a head. "Excuse me, Colonel Porter. I am Ambassador Nira from the Bloom Collective. We are a peaceful species. We have never engaged in warfare. Your actions at Refuge Station saved many lives, but they also frightened many of us. Can you help me understand? Why do humans seem so comfortable with violence?" Porter knelt down to be at eye level with the small ambassador. "We are not comfortable with violence. We hate it, actually, but we hate injustice more. We hate seeing innocent people suffer when we have the power to help. Violence is a tool like any other. We only use it when necessary, but when it is necessary, we do not hesitate." Nira seemed to think about this. "Your world must have been very harsh to teach you such lessons." Porter nodded. "It was, but it also taught us compassion. It taught us to value life because we know how fragile it is. It taught us to stand together because alone we would not survive. Earth made us strong, but it also made us human." The small ambassador seemed satisfied with this answer and walked away. Porter stood up and looked around the massive hall. All these different species, all living together in relative peace. It was beautiful, but it was also vulnerable. The galaxy had built a civilization based on the idea that everyone could be reasoned with, that every problem had a diplomatic solution. The Kraith had proven that idea wrong, and humans had shown everyone that there was another way, a harder way, a way that required courage and sacrifice. 6 hours later, the council would reconvene. They would vote on what to do about humanity. Porter knew that some would want to welcome humans. Others would want to restrict them or even force them to leave galactic space. The next few hours would determine the future of human relations with the entire galaxy. But whatever happened, one thing was certain. The galaxy had learned that humans existed, and that knowledge would change everything. 6 hours passed quickly. During that time, representatives from hundreds of species held private meetings. Some formed groups that wanted to welcome humans into the galactic community. Others formed groups that wanted to keep humans away. A few tried to stay neutral, waiting to see which side would win. When the council reconvened, the atmosphere was tense. High Counselor Marin looked tired. She had spent the entire break in meetings, trying to understand all the different opinions and find a path forward. Before we begin our formal debate, Marin announced, "I would like to introduce Admiral Patricia Grant of Earth. She has just arrived from the human home system and wishes to address the council." Admiral Grant walked onto the platform. She was older than Colonel Porter, with gray hair and a face that showed many years of experience. She wore a uniform covered with medals and symbols. Most council members did not know what those symbols meant, but they looked impressive and somehow intimidating. Honored council members, Grant began in a strong, clear voice. "I represent the United Nations of Earth. We understand that our arrival has caused disruption. We did not come here seeking to interfere in your politics." Captain Morrison simply responded to a distress call as any decent person should. The fact that his response was effective should be seen as fortunate, not threatening. Councillor Varn stood up immediately. The Kraith people demand payment for the destruction of 3 military vessels and the deaths of over 2,000 crew members. Furthermore, we demand that humanity be banned from entering galactic space until they prove they can behave peacefully. Grant turned to face the Kraith counselor directly. Her expression was hard and cold. Let me be very clear. Humanity will not apologize for defending innocent civilians. We will not pay money for stopping a war crime. And we will absolutely not be banned from space that, as far as we can tell, does not belong to any single species. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives shouted in support of Grant. Others protested loudly. Marin had to call for order several times before people quieted down. Representative Kale spoke up. Admiral Grant, while I appreciate your passion, you must understand that this council has maintained peace for nearly 1,000 years through careful diplomacy and non-interference. Your species has been in space for less than a century, and you have already engaged in combat. How can we trust that you will not become the next threat to galactic peace? Grant's expression softened slightly. Representative Kale, I understand your concern. But let me ask you this. When the Valerian people sent out their distress call, where was this council? Where was your careful diplomacy? 3,000 civilians were about to die, and your 1,000 years of peace meant nothing to them. Ambassador Tyron stood up in support. Admiral Grant speaks a truth that makes many of us uncomfortable. The Council's non-interference rules have been used as an excuse for inaction when people needed help. The Kraith have been testing boundaries for decades, and we have responded with words and economic sanctions. Only when humans arrived did someone actually stop them. This statement caused another wave of discussion. Several smaller species began speaking up, mentioning times when they had been victims of aggression and the Council had been slow to help. High Counselor Marin raised her arms again. It seems we must address a larger question. We must examine whether our systems for maintaining peace actually work, or if they simply allow those who break the rules to do so without real consequences. She turned to Grant. Humanity presents us with a puzzle. You are clearly capable warriors, but you also responded to a crisis without hesitation. You used violence, but only against those who were themselves being violent. How do we reconcile these seeming contradictions? Grant thought carefully before answering. Counselor, there is no contradiction. Humans understand that sometimes violence is necessary to stop greater violence. We do not seek war, but we will not allow innocents to suffer when we have the power to help. If that makes us dangerous in your eyes, then perhaps you need to reconsider what danger really means. A new voice entered the discussion. Dr. Leonard Hayes, a human scientist who had been consulting with council members during the break, stood with permission to speak. If I may offer a thought, Hayes began. I believe the disconnect here is philosophical. Most species in this council evolved on relatively peaceful worlds. Your idea of conflict resolution is based on the belief that all parties can be reasoned with, given enough time and the right incentives. He gestured around the chamber. Humans evolved on a world where negotiation was not always possible. Sometimes a predator cannot be reasoned with. Sometimes a natural disaster does not care about your diplomatic skills. We learn to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. That is what you saw at Refuge Station. Humans hoping that violence would not be necessary, but prepared to use it when peaceful options had already failed. Representative Kale spoke thoughtfully. Dr. Hayes, are you suggesting that most galactic species are simply naive about the nature of conflict? Hayes shook his head. Not naive. Lucky. You evolved in circumstances that did not require the same level of constant awareness that Earth did. There is no moral superiority either way. But now that we have found each other, we need to figure out how to work together. High Counselor Marin made a decision. This council will vote on 3 proposals. First, whether to grant humanity temporary membership in the Galactic Council. Second, whether to establish a joint investigation into the Kraith attack on Refuge Station and determine appropriate responses. Third, whether to reform our non-interference protocols to allow for humanitarian intervention in extreme circumstances. The votes took several hours. There were long debates on each point. Representatives gave speeches supporting or opposing each proposal. The human delegation waited patiently, knowing that their future in the galaxy depended on these decisions. Finally, the votes were tallied. All 3 proposals passed by significant margins. The Kraith Dominion and several of their allies voted against everything. but they were outnumbered by species who recognized that the galaxy was changing. After the session ended, Admiral Grant approached High Counselor Marin privately. "Counselor, I want to thank you for giving humanity a chance. I know we are not what you are used to." Marin's crystalline form seemed to shimmer. "Admiral, in all my years of service I have learned that the most valuable allies are often the ones who challenge your assumptions. Humanity has certainly done that. I only hope this partnership benefits all of us." Grant smiled. "Counselor, I can promise you one thing. If there is another distress call, humans will answer it. That is who we are. Whether that makes us your greatest asset or your biggest problem remains to be seen." As the human delegation left the council chambers, representatives from dozens of species followed them. Some wanted to discuss trade agreements. Some wanted to establish embassies on Earth. Some simply wanted to learn more about these strange beings from a death world who had appeared from nowhere and changed galactic politics in just a few days. Colonel Porter walked beside Admiral Grant as they made their way through the crowd. "Admiral, do you think this will work? Can we really fit into their civilization?" Grant looked at the various aliens around them. Some were tall, some were short. Some had fur, some had scales, some looked like plants. They were all so different from each other, yet they had found a way to coexist. "I think we can, Helen. We just need to remember that we are not here to change them. We are here to be ourselves and let them decide how they want to interact with us." Dr. Hayes joined them. "The interesting thing is that our presence has already changed them. Several species have told me that they are rethinking their defense policies. Others are looking at their non-interference rules more critically. Just by existing, we have made them question assumptions they have held for centuries." Grant nodded. "That might be our most important contribution. Not our military strength, but our different perspective. Sometimes an outsider can see problems that insiders miss." As they left the building, they could see ships from many worlds flying through the sky. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and purple. It was beautiful and alien and somehow familiar all at once. The galaxy's long peace had ended, but perhaps it had never been real peace at all. Perhaps it had just been the absence of anyone willing to disturb comfortable complacency. Now humans had arrived, bringing with them uncomfortable truths about courage, sacrifice, and the sometimes necessary use of force. The galaxy would never be the same, and maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Refuge Station. The galaxy looked very different now. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of a brand new space station called Terran Defense Station Alpha. It orbited a neutral planet that had been designated as a diplomatic zone. The station served as both an embassy and a military outpost for humanity. Jake was no longer captain of the Wanderer. That ship had been retired and placed in a museum on Earth. It was now a symbol of first contact, a piece of history. Jake commanded a new vessel called the Guardian, one of 5 warships that Earth had sent to protect human interests in galactic space. Admiral Grant walked up behind him. Her footsteps echoed in the large observation room. "Captain, we just got word from the Council. The investigation into the Kraith Dominion has finished. They are facing heavy sanctions. Their military is being restricted. Several of their border territories have declared independence with Council support." Morrison nodded slowly. "How are the Kraith taking it?" "About as well as you would expect. They are claiming they are being treated unfairly and threatening to leave the Council entirely, but most of their allies have abandoned them. Turns out that attacking civilian stations is bad for your reputation, even among aggressive species." They stood quietly for a moment, watching ships from a dozen different species come and go from the station. Trade between Earth and various galactic civilizations had grown rapidly in the past few months. Humans were discovering that their ability to adapt and their strong work ethic made them valuable partners in many industries. "Admiral, do you think we did the right thing?" Jake asked suddenly. "We changed everything. The galaxy had peace, even if it was not perfect. Now there are military buildups, territorial disputes, and species that see us as either saviors or threats." Grant thought carefully about her answer. "Jake, peace that requires you to ignore crimes is not real peace. It is just cowardice dressed up in nice words. Yes, things are more unstable now. Yes, there are challenges ahead. But there are also thousands of Valerian civilians alive today who would not be if you had not answered that distress call." She pointed at the busy station around them. "And look at this." Species that had barely communicated for centuries are now working together, learning from each other. The Arinthians are sharing their advanced sensor technology with us. The Valerians are teaching our doctors about their medical techniques. Even some isolated species are reaching out, curious about these humans who appeared from nowhere. Morrison smiled. I heard that Ambassador Tyron is writing a book about the incident. He is calling it something like The Day the Galaxy Met the Deathworlders. Grant laughed. Yes, and Dr. Hayes is helping him to make sure the science is accurate. Apparently, there is a lot of interest in understanding Earth and its evolution. We are like fascinating monsters to most of them. A signal indicated an incoming transmission. Morrison activated the communication panel. This is Captain Morrison. A holographic image appeared showing Coordinator Alara from Refuge Station. She had become a close ally of humanity in the months since the battle. Captain Morrison, Admiral Grant, I wanted to tell you personally. Refuge Station has been fully repaired and expanded. We are dedicating a section of the new construction as the Human Memorial. It will honor those who came to our aid when no one else would. Morrison felt emotion tighten his throat. Coordinator, that is not necessary. We only did what anyone should have done. Alara smiled warmly. Perhaps that is exactly why it is necessary, Captain. To remind others of what they should do, not just what is politically convenient. After the transmission ended, Morrison and Grant walked to the station's command center. Commander Luis Rodriguez was already there, along with Colonel Porter and Dr. Hayes. They were reviewing reports from all across human-occupied space. Rodriguez looked up as they entered. Admiral Captain, we just received an interesting request. The Thelonian Republic wants to establish a joint training program with our military. They say they want to learn human tactical methods. Porter raised an eyebrow. The Thelonians? They are one of the most advanced military powers in the galaxy. What could we possibly teach them? Rodriguez smiled. According to their ambassador, they want to learn about improvisation, adaptive thinking, and what they call aggressive defense. Apparently, our willingness to take calculated risks is something their military doctrine does not emphasize. Hayes spoke up from his workstation. It is more than that. I have been consulting with their military psychologists. Most galactic species train their soldiers to follow established protocols and avoid unnecessary risk. Humans train their soldiers to think independently and adapt to changing circumstances. It is a fundamental philosophical difference in how we approach conflict. Grant nodded thoughtfully. Approve the joint training program, but make it clear that this is mutual. We can learn as much from them as they can from us. And Rodriguez, start making a list of other potential training partnerships. If species want to learn from us, we should use the opportunity to build relationships. As the meeting continued, Morrison found his thoughts drifting back to that moment 3 months ago, when the Wanderer had arrived at Refuge Station. One decision, made in a moment of clear moral judgment, had changed the course of galactic history. Later that evening, Morrison stood alone on the observation deck again, watching the stars. Lieutenant Karen Phillips joined him. Her presence was welcome. What are you thinking about, Captain? She asked. Morrison smiled. Just thinking about how we got here. 3 months ago, we were a survey ship on a routine mission. Now we are at the center of galactic politics, and Earth is negotiating treaties with alien species we did not even know existed. Phillips nodded. Do you ever regret it? Answering that distress call? Never, Morrison said firmly. We saved lives, Karen. Everything else is just details. As they stood together watching the galaxy slowly turn outside the window, neither of them noticed a small ship that had just docked at the far end of the station. It carried a delegation from a distant species that had just heard about humans and wanted to make contact. The galaxy was still adjusting to the presence of Deathworlders. Some species welcomed humanity with friendship. Others watched with suspicion. And a few, like the remnants of the Kraith Dominion, were plotting revenge. But one thing had become clear to everyone. The old order was gone. The 1,000-year peace that had been maintained through careful non-interference and diplomatic maneuvering was finished. In its place, something new was emerging. A galaxy where helping those in need was valued over political convenience. Where standing up to bullies was celebrated rather than discouraged. Where a species from a harsh world called Earth had reminded everyone what it meant to have courage. Admiral Grant gave one final order before going to sleep. Tell all human vessels to stay alert. Keep monitoring emergency channels. And make sure everyone knows that if another distress call comes in, we respond. No questions asked. That is who we are now. That is who we have always been. The message went out across human space. Every ship, station, and outpost received and acknowledged it. Humanity had found its role in the galactic community, not as conquerors or diplomats or merchants, though they would be all of those things at times. They would be the ones who answered the call. And in a galaxy that had grown comfortable with looking away, that made all the difference. 6 months after the Battle of Refuge Station, humanity had established itself firmly in galactic society. Earth now had embassies on 12 different worlds. Human ships traveled freely through established trade routes. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers on projects that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. But not everything was peaceful. On the edge of Kraith space, tensions were building. The Kraith Dominion had not forgotten their defeat at Refuge Station. They had not forgiven the sanctions imposed by the Galactic Council. And they had not abandoned their belief that they deserved to control this region of space. General Victor Cole sat in his office on Terran Defense Station Alpha, reviewing intelligence reports. He was the highest-ranking military officer in human space, responsible for coordinating all Earth's military operations beyond the home system. The reports he was reading were troubling. Admiral Grant entered his office without knocking. They had worked together for many years and did not stand on ceremony. "Victor, we need to talk about the Kraith situation." Cole nodded and gestured to a chair. "I have been reading the same reports you have. The Kraith are rebuilding their fleet. They are doing it quietly, but our intelligence sources say they have at least 15 new warships under construction." Grant sat down heavily. 15 ships. That is more than their entire fleet before the sanctions. They are not just rebuilding. They are preparing for something big. The question is, what are they preparing for? Are they planning to attack us, or are they going after easier targets first? Grant pulled out a datapad and showed Cole a star map. "Our analysts think they will go after the independent territories first. These are the regions that broke away from Kraith control after the sanctions. The Kraith see them as traitors. They will want to make an example of them." Cole studied the map. Those territories have almost no defenses. The Kraith could roll over them in days. "Have we warned the Council?" "Yes, and the Council is doing what it always does. Forming committees. Discussing options. Debating the proper response. By the time they decide to act, it will be too late." Cole leaned back in his chair. "So what do you want to do?" Grant smiled slightly. "I want to do what we always do. I want to get there first. I want to position our ships in those independent territories before the Kraith attack. And I want to make it very clear that anyone who attacks them will have to go through us." Cole thought about this for a moment. "That is a big commitment. We only have 5 warships in this region. If the Kraith come with 15, we might not win. We do not need to win. We just need to make it too expensive for them to try. The Kraith are bullies. They only attack when they think they can win easily. If we show them that there will be a real fight, they might back down. And if they do not back down," Grant's expression hardened, "then we fight, and we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens innocent people while humans are around." Cole nodded slowly. "I will make the arrangements. But Patricia, you know this could start a real war, not just a skirmish. A full-scale conflict, I know. But what is the alternative? We sit back and watch the Kraith conquer peaceful territories? We let them think they can do whatever they want? No, we drew a line at Refuge Station. We have to hold that line." Over the next 3 weeks, human warships quietly moved into position. The Guardian, now under Captain Morrison's command, took up station near the planet of New Haven, one of the larger independent territories. The other 4 human warships spread out to cover the most vulnerable worlds. Morrison stood on his bridge looking at the planet below. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. About 2 million people lived there, mostly refugees from Kraith oppression who had fled when the territories declared independence. They were trying to build peaceful lives. They deserved protection. Commander Rodriguez came to stand beside him. "Sir, we are getting reports that the Kraith fleet has left their home system. They are heading this way. 15 warships, just like intelligence predicted." Morrison nodded. "Time until they arrive?" "About 6 hours. Alert the other ships. Prepare for combat. And send a message to the Kraith fleet. Tell them that these territories are under human protection. If they attack, they will face consequences." 6 hours later, the Kraith fleet arrived. They came out of faster-than-light travel in formation, their ships arranged in a threatening display of power. 15 heavy cruisers, each one a formidable warship. Against them stood 5 human vessels. The Kraith fleet commander sent a transmission. Human vessels, you are interfering in internal Kraith affairs. These territories belong to the Dominion. Withdraw immediately or face destruction, Morrison replied calmly. Kraith commander, these territories declared their independence with the support of the Galactic Council. They are now sovereign worlds. Any attack on them will be considered an act of aggression. We are here to ensure their safety. There was a long silence. Morrison could imagine the Kraith commander doing calculations. 15 ships against 5. The numbers were clearly in their favor. But they had also heard what happened at Refuge Station. They knew that humans fought differently than other species. Finally, the Kraith commander sent another message. You are outnumbered 3-1. You cannot win this fight. Morrison smiled grimly. Maybe not, but we will make you pay dearly for every meter of space. Your fleet will be damaged so badly that it will not be able to fight for months, maybe years. Is conquering one planet worth that cost? Another long silence. Morrison waited. His crew was ready. Their weapons were powered up. They would fight if they had to. But then something unexpected happened. The Kraith fleet turned around. Slowly, without firing a shot, 15 warships changed course and began moving away from the planet. The bridge crew erupted in cheers. They backed down. Lieutenant Phillips shouted, "They actually backed down." Morrison allowed himself a small smile, but he knew this was not really a victory. It was just a postponement. The Kraith would return eventually, maybe with more ships, maybe with better tactics. But for now, the people of New Haven were safe. News of the confrontation spread quickly across the galaxy. The Kraith Dominion, which had been the feared military power in the region for centuries, had backed down from a fight with humans. Some species saw this as proof that humans were too dangerous to have as neighbors. Others saw it as proof that humans were exactly the kind of allies they needed. On Earth, people watched the news with mixed emotions. Pride that their military had protected innocent people, fear that they might be dragging humanity into conflicts that could spread, hope that maybe, just maybe, Earth had found its purpose in the galaxy. Admiral Grant gave an interview to Galactic News Networks. She explained humanity's position simply. We do not see conflict. We do not want war, but we will not stand by and watch innocent people suffer when we have the power to help. That is not who we are. That is not who we will ever be. Dr. Hayes, watching the interview from his lab, smiled. 6 months ago, the galaxy did not know humans existed. Now humanity had become the conscience of the galaxy. The voice that reminded everyone that peace without justice was not peace at all. The galaxy was still adjusting to this new reality. Old alliances were being reconsidered. Defense policies were being rewritten. Species that had not talked to each other in generations were suddenly communicating, trying to figure out how to deal with these unpredictable humans. And somewhere in space, on dozens of worlds, people who had felt helpless now felt hope, because they knew that if they ever needed help, if they ever sent out a distress call, humans would answer. The Deathworlders would come, and they would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. The 1,000-year peace was over, but maybe something better was beginning. A galaxy where courage mattered more than comfort, where doing the right thing was more important than following rules, where a single distress call had summoned Deathworlders and changed everything forever.